Okay,
All right,
Scott.
great. Thank you so much. We want to start off just by welcome everybody that's joined us for our webinar today. We're really excited to have so many of you participating and joining with us for our webinar today, which is going to be focused on application and selection. Before we really get going into the details of the webinar, we want to just take a minute or two to introduce the speakers and the panelists that are going to be involved in today's webinar. I'll start off. My name is Scott Beach, and I am the mental health specialist for the health services unit at AmeriCorps NCCC. And basically what my job is I work with people to help them with medical clearances and make sure they're fit and ready to do the service duties that they're going to be expected to do while serving with AmeriCorps. Make sure they kind of know what they're getting into and making sure they've got all their mental health and medical needs taken care of. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the webinar as well. So that's it for me. Who else of my participant panelists would like to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Bradford. I'm a program associate at our headquarters for AmeriCorps NCCC. So I mostly work a lot with member data. I also review and edit a lot of sponsor documents to make sure members have fulfilling and engaging projects. I also previously served in FEMA Corps for 2 terms as both a Corps member and a team leader.
Hi everyone, this is Jackie DeLude. I am a member of the recruitment team at the headquarters level as well, though I'm based in Philadelphia. I work on recruitment as well as digital marketing, so you all probably have received at least one email from me, including the invitation for this webinar today. And so I'm just really involved in trying to get everybody the information and tools they need in order to make a decision about whether AmeriCorps NCCC is right for them and to prepare them for service.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Loisel. I'm a member support specialist. I work here at NCCC headquarters, but I serve the North Central and Southwest regions. My job basically entails providing support to members through the various benefits that the program offers while you are in service. So if you do end up serving with NCCC, you may see my name from time to time.
All right, thank you everyone. So I just wanted to give our participants a little idea. We're going to give you some information about the application and selection process, and then at the end of that presentation, we'll have time for a question and answer period. So as we are going through the information in the presentation, please feel free to send questions to us through the Q&A feature that Jeff told us about. Erica, Jackie, and Caitlin will be monitoring those questions and making a decision about whether they want to respond to you directly or about whether they think that's a good question that everybody might want to hear the answer to. If it's that latter case, they'll save your question for the end for the Q&A section, and we'll go from there. So yeah, we'll have some time for you to hear what you want to know from us and give you a chance to pick our brains. So I mentioned this is the application and selection webinar. We also have another webinar that's gives you more general background information about the AmeriCorps programs and what we offer. And it goes into a lot of detail about what you can expect, what service looks like, what kinds of things you'll be doing while you're serving and things like that. The webinar that we're doing today is targeted for an audience of people who have sort of already made the decision that they want to do AmeriCorps NCCC, and they are ready to start the process of application, and they're just looking for some tips for those process. So we want to start off with our first poll question. And as you can see it on your screen, we're going to give you about 30 seconds or so to respond to that. We'll take about 10 more seconds to give you an opportunity to respond. All right, so it looks like we've got a couple of you that have attended a virtual event in the past. Hopefully that was the webinar that we had that I talked about earlier, the A to Z webinar. But for the majority of you, this will be your first virtual event. So we are super excited to have you with us. And we really hope that you find the information helpful and the opportunity to ask us some questions helpful as well. So we'll go ahead and move forward here. So we do want to talk a little bit about just the background of NCCC in case some of you are still kind of curious about what NCCC is about and what's important about it. We're really excited about this program. We work for the program, but we're excited because it offers individuals the opportunity to develop leadership skills. It gives them the opportunity to work on tasks and projects where they are mentored and taught how to be leaders, and also given the opportunity to practice those skills. They get to practice those skills and programs that will really transform their lives and really test your strengths and their abilities and their ability to manage different projects, to work with different people that they've never met before, to work in areas where they've never lived or visited before, and to do things that are really meaningful and have a really significant impact on the lives of others. That's one of the main features of the NCCC program that makes it stand out, is that we find work, we do jobs for people who really need the support and really need the help. And so they are very thankful and they're grateful for the things that we can do for them. It'll prepare our core members and the folks that are serving with us to be leaders in their community when they leave the program, to be leaders in their jobs when they leave the programs, and to be able to continue the efforts to serve our community and make our communities better places. While you're serving, you receive full room and board, you receive medical benefits, you're giving a modest stipend, and also at the end of service, there's an education award that you can use towards a future college expense or to help you pay for college expenses that you've already accrued. Just to give you a little idea of the general structure of AmeriCorps, and this will kind of come into bear a little bit as we go through the today's webinar, but you can see this is sort of our structure program for our core members. As you notice, we kind of have two key programs. One's called Traditional Corps and one's called FEMA Corps. There are some pretty significant differences between the two programs, so it's really important for you to know exactly what you're getting into. One difference you'll notice if you read the Traditional Corps box, it says that it's a 10-month service experience, and then the FEMA Corps box indicates that it's an immersive 12-month professional experience. So when you think of Traditional Corps, it's a outdoors, rugged, get your hands dirty, face-to-face, direct, hands-on service projects that you're doing. You're in the weeds working with people to rebuild houses, to help out with infrastructure, to work with children, all those kinds of things. You're doing stuff very face-to-face and very direct and very hands-on. The FEMA Corps program, which is 2 months longer, is a little bit more of administrative work. So you will have some direct interaction with individuals that have been impacted by disasters, but a lot of the work that our teams are doing with the FEMA Corps program are behind the scenes, answering phones, giving people information, taking down people's information, trying to make sure supplies are organized and stocked and shipped out as they need to be. They're not, the people that are doing FEMA Corps aren't in the trenches. They aren't, working directly to rebuild homes and to clean up places that have been impacted by disasters. But they're doing really important work to help all that stuff flow better. Sorry, that's the lack of a better term, better. You can see too, so we've got the two programs. Each program has a group of core members and a team leader. So the teams go to be about 10 or 11 core members, and then each team has a team leader. And you'll notice there on the graphic too, the core members are ages 18 to 24, and the team leaders are at least 18, and they have no upper age limit. And that's true for both the traditional Corps and the FEMA Corps. So those are the two different paths of service. We want to reach out and give you another poll. So our second poll is to find out a little bit more about what you are particularly interested in. So go ahead and take about 20 or 30 seconds to respond to this. It's certainly okay if you're not sure. Go ahead and feel free to put that down. If you're not sure, you might want to think about attending the other webinar that we do to get more information about the differences between the two projects. Also, responding to this poll will help us kind of know what kind of information that we have to give you. So please, please feel free to put that down. And we'll wait probably about another 10 seconds or so to get that polls completed. All right, so as I'm looking at this, like we have a few people that indicated that they're not sure, and again, like I said, that's fine. We will hopefully give you some more ideas of what to expect with the different programs and the different positions, but definitely our other webinar, the A to Z webinar, focuses really on the differences between the positions and the placements. We have a pretty even spread about people who are interested in being Corps members, either through the traditional Corps or the FEMA Corps. And then we have a good handful of people who are also interested in being team leaders. So yeah, we have a nice little spread. So there'll be some times later on in the webinar where there'll be some information that's specific to the team leaders. And I will make sure that it's clear for you when we're in those positions. All right, so let's move on. As you're considering any job, you want to put your best foot forward, and one of the ways that you can do that is trying to find out what is it that this job that I'm interested in is looking for. And we're going to go ahead and tell you right off the bat what we're looking for to kind of give you a leg up and give you some help on that. So as we said before, the basic requirements for service are for Corps members to be 18 to 24 years old. One thing I'll say about that too is that as long as you're 24-year-olds when you start the service term, then you're still eligible. So let's say for the sake of argument that we're starting up a service term on March 1st, and we're not, I'm just saying that as an example. If you're 24 on March 1st and you turn 25 on March 2nd, you would still be eligible to serve. So it's, again, you have to be 24 once the program starts. If you do have any questions about that, or you're curious as you're applying, there will be a way that you can talk to somebody to help you answer that question. Remember again that there's no upper age limit for team leaders, so you can be however old. As far as citizenship goes, you'll see that to do the traditional Corps, we accept individuals who are U.S. citizens, individuals who are considered U.S. nationals, and people who are also considered to be lawful permanent residents. The traditional program can be a little bit more flexible. For the FEMA Corps program, however, you do have to be a U.S. citizen. The FEMA Corps tends to be a little bit more rigid in their expectations for service people. So the other thing to keep in mind is we are looking for people who are able to leave and be away from home for 10 to 12 months. As you saw, that the traditional Corps is a 10-month-long program. There'll be some time that that you'll have off during those 10 months, but you're expected to be with your team for most of that time. So it's going to be pretty important that you can make that 10-month commitment. Or if you're in FEMA Corps, it's a 12-month commitment. So that's something that you need to decide ahead of time and make sure you're aware of. The other thing that you want to consider is some things that'll set you apart. And the two main things that we look at to try to really get an idea of who are getting involved in our programs are individuals having a demonstrated commitment to community service, and people have outstanding references. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about outstanding references and what kind of references to give later on in the webinar, but those are really the two key things to consider. So taking a look now at this graphic, you'll see 7 steps, and these are the 7 steps to the process for applying and being accepted and prepared and ready to serve. These 7 steps are the same basic 7 steps, regardless of whether you're applying to be a Corps member or a team leader or a in FEMA or the traditional Corps. We're going to break each of these steps down and talk about them in a little bit more detail. Most of what we're going to be focusing on is step 2, where it's talking about completing the application, because we really want to drill down there and make sure you have an understanding of what's expected. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first step. So the first step is creating a profile. And as you look at the screen, you'll notice when you go to myamericorps.gov, you can find the spot over here by this red arrow where it says apply to serve. And if you click on that button, it'll take you to the spot where you can fill in a bunch of information about yourself in a typical profile fashion. It's going to ask you for information like your full name, your mailing address, your social security number, your email address, all that kind of information, and then some other information just to kind of about general background questions about yourself. The information that you put in there, like your social security number and your birth date, that information remains confidential and secure once you create the profile. So we want you to be aware of that as well. After you fill out all that information and verify your email address, then you can log into the account and you can begin the application progress. So once you complete the profile, check your email to make sure you get the verification email and follow the verification email instructions, and then you know you're good to go. So once you've created your profile, then you can start the work towards completing the application. As you'll notice, there are these 8 sections that are a part of completing the application. Motivational statement, the skills and experience, education, community service, employment history, criminal history questionnaire, demographic information, and references. So we're going to break down each of these 8 sections and talk in a little bit more detail about those. But that'll give you sort of a general idea of where we are. We want to give you an idea that it takes about an hour to fill out the application, but it also depends on sort of how prepared you are ahead of time. So we want to give you some ideas of what information to have ready so you can get through the application a little bit quicker, and hopefully that'll help you out. We also have a visual application guide that is available to you, and one of my panelists, I think maybe Jackie, is now going to paste the web address to that in the chat box. So you can make a note of that if you want, or you can follow it. We're also going to include that link to the visual application guide when we send a follow-up email to you at the end of the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we'll send an email out to everyone that'll include a copy of the recording, it'll include a copy of the visual application guide and some other information as well. So you should be able to have that with you as you need. All right, so the first step of creating an application is the motivational statement. And as you can see, once you go into a profile, you'll click on this application button, which is over here on the left, and then you will create a new application. If you have to interrupt your application for some reason and go and leave, you can log out and then come back, and you'll be able to select your application where you started right here, and you can go from there to work further on your application. And this will help you fill out the 8 sections. You might not also notice on this screen that there's a box up here that includes the 8 steps, and you can see there's these little check boxes in some of these labels, and then this one doesn't have a checkbox. Every time you complete a step, it checks off a box to indicate that that step has been completed. So as you go through your questionnaire and you complete the motivational statement, then that box will check, and then you know that you've completed it. if you leave and come back, you can look and see, okay, and you can see what you still need to work on. In this case, you can see that the education needs to go to be worked on. So you can go and you can just click on the education button and it'll take you there and you can finish it. So the motivation statement. The motivational statement is your opportunity to show us who you are as a person, to demonstrate that you understand what NCCC is, and to demonstrate why it is a good fit for you. If you sort of read through the sample motivational statement that we have there, this individual starts off just by saying what it is about AmeriCorps NCCC that appeals to them. They like the life of community service and like helping others. The individual also tells a little bit more about themselves and that they're interested in traveling, meeting new people, and working outdoors and challenging themselves. And these are all parts of the AmeriCorps program. And so it makes sense that they will put that in there. It shows us that they kind of know what they're getting into and that these are things that they're excited about. We also think that they finish up by saying that they see AmeriCorps NCCC as a way to combine all their interests and do something that matters. So we really understand why it is that they are wanting to do this program. So be thoughtful and give us a chance to really get to know you in this motivational statement. One of the things that I'll also mention to you as kind of a pro tip is that this little text box doesn't have spell check, it doesn't have grammar check, it doesn't have autocorrect, and those are tools that we are all pretty accustomed to having these days. So we recommend that you type your motivational statement out on a different thing, like on a Word file or something like that, and get the grammar errors all fixed and the spelling errors all fixed, and then you can copy and paste that into the box, and it just makes it a little bit easier for you. So just a little pro tip. The next step in the application process is about the skills and experience section. And so one of the things that I'll say about the skills and experience section is that when you fill out your profile, one of the things that you'll be asked is to give, to check which areas are skills and experiences for you. And so what happens is after you do that on your profile and then you come to fill out your application, those skills and experiences that you've checked off already will pre-populate here. And this is your opportunity to tell a little bit more about how you got that skill or how you write that skill or that experience, just to give you information about that or give us information about that. It's important here to remember to not leave any of those skills blank and make sure that you talk a little bit about that experience for everything. Regarding education, the information that we're looking for regarding education is the highest level of education that you will have achieved by the time you begin service. One of the things I want to point out is that NCCC does not have an education requirement. So if you don't have a diploma, if you don't have a GED, that's not a part of our requirement. So you don't have to be worried about that, but just give us an idea of where you are. And again, it's the highest level of education you will have achieved by the time you begin service. So our next class that's starting up is in summer of 2020. If you're graduating from high school in May or early June of 2020, you will have a high school diploma, even though you don't have it now, or even if you're putting in your application right now, you don't have your high school diploma now, but you'll have it by the time you start this summer 2020 service term, which begins in July. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. The next up is a little bit about community service. And remember we said people showing a demonstration or demonstrating a commitment to community service is something we highly value and something that we look at closely. So this is another area where if you don't have community service, it's okay, we get that, but we want you to kind of think about anything that you can to put in there, any ways you've been involved in your community or ways you've tried to support your community, whether that's helping out with a church group in a soup kitchen or doing a volunteer opportunity at school for like a cleanup day or any project that you might have done that's a volunteer time to help others in your community. The Why I Serve section is another opportunity for you to describe your interest in community service and show why it's important to you. And that's something that we look at closely, because that's what you're going to be doing for the most of your time. We talked about there being a brief, a small stipend, and we talked about the educational benefit and some of the other benefits to service, but really you're going to be doing volunteer work and service work and that's where the focus is. Looking at the employment history on the other side of the screen, if you've had a job, that's great. Let us know who your employers were and their contact information. That includes email address and phone number. If you have not had a job, don't worry about it. A lot of the people that apply to our programs are right out of high school and they don't have that work experience. That's fine. Just, let us know. If it's just that you just graduated high school and you haven't had a chance to get a job, that's all we need to know. That's all we're looking for there. So yeah, feel free to be open and as open and honest as you can when you fill these things out. The next part of the application process is the criminal history questionnaire. So the reason why the criminal history check is done is because we work with vulnerable populations and we want to make sure all of our core members and all the people that serve with us are going to help make sure those populations are safe. When we're in the field, we're working with children, we're working with people with disabilities, we're working with people who are age 60 years and older. So we really want to make sure that we can say that those people are going to be as safe as possible. So when you're filling out the criminal history questionnaire, be honest. If you have a record for something, it does not necessarily disqualify you from service. So if you do have a question about whether maybe you have a past charge of some type, if you have a question about whether or not that would disqualify you, let us know. We can connect you with someone in the selection and placement team who can answer that question better than we can, and we'll get you connected with that person. Your case will be evaluated on an individual basis, so we just want to encourage you to be open and honest there. I will say that the FEMA Corps criminal background check is a little more rigid and a little more strict than the traditional Corps background check, so that might be something to keep in mind. There have been some times where individuals wanted to serve with FEMA Corps and their criminal history background check would not allow them to, but they were still eligible to serve with the traditional Corps. So if you can't serve with FEMA Corps because of that, you still have an option to serve traditional Corps. So just something to keep in mind. The next section, the next step to the application section is about demographic information. Just real quick to say about the demographic information is we just use that information for our own purposes and so that we can have an understanding of what typically what people are interested in our programs and who is attracted to service work and attracted to AmeriCorps. So we use it for our own benefits. That is a completely optional section. You don't have to answer that if you don't want. We keep those results confidential and they have zero to do with your eligibility to serve. So yeah. All right, awesome. So the next section is going to be about references. I told you we'd kind of come back to references here in a second. So taking a look at this screen, you can see that references are weighed heavily in the selection process. And so it's important to select references who know you well and who are going to speak highly of you. So when you're thinking about who to select as references, you want to pick people who really have demonstrated that they are interested in seeing you succeed and they care about you and are impressed with you. Just as a little, again, a little pro tip note, as you can see in this little box, it tells you that you would put the reference's name here, their relation to you right here, and this is when the reference was created and when it was modified. And this is work that we do. Completed means that the reference has responded and sent their form back to us. But your reference isn't a reference until you hit this button, this little select button over here. So you put in the two references that you need, you select these two buttons, and then you put finish application. And once you do that, then those 2 references have been officially attached to your application. So that's a really important step right there to remember. So we talked about the importance of references. So I just want to give us a chance for another poll. So we'll go ahead and get that one up, and I want you to take about 30 seconds to think about this one and respond to this one as well. Who do you think would not be a good person to ask to serve as a reference? Take about 5 more seconds or so to complete that. All right, and take a look at our results. All right, so who do you think would not be a good person to ask to serve as a reference? It looks like most of you selected a close friend, and a couple of you selected a pastor, and a couple of you an algebra teacher. So in general, you are correct. It's the close friend that doesn't serve as a good reference. Let me just kind of forward the slide here, and I'll kind of give you a list of who would be a good idea to ask. So anybody that has supervised you in doing work is good. A pastor actually is an okay reference because the pastor is different enough, distance enough from you in a relationship, and the pastor still sort of has a professional role with you. So that's that would still be okay. A coach, a counselor, it's still okay, also okay to have a teacher or a professor be one of your references as well. So an algebra teacher would still be an okay reference. Again, because they have a professional relationship with you. That can sometimes be a little bit personal, but it's not as personal as a mother or father, your sister, your brother, an aunt or an uncle. So again, take a look at those. One of the things that I want to point out here too is that we've had a couple people that will use a family member as their reference, and that family member has served with AmeriCorps NCCC in the past. It's still not a good idea to have a family member be your reference, even if they served with AmeriCorps NCCC in the past, just because we're looking for individuals who have more of a professional relationship with you and not that personal relationship with you. Because people that have a personal relationship with us tend to say all the positive things about us without really sometimes being 100% honest and accurate, if that makes sense. So that's kind of why it's important. Remember, you're applying for a professional job, even though it's a service program. So when you share references, when you're getting references, you want to make sure also that you're getting updated and accurate information from them, especially email. Once we get your application and we get your reference, we will shoot them an email to ask them to fill out some questions about you. And so that's how we get in touch with them. So you really want to make sure that email is accurate. You also want to give them a heads up that you are using them as a reference before you give them a reference. And then also give them a little information about the program, what AmeriCorps NCCC is, why you're interested, those kinds of things. Because if they have that information, then it's going to help them prepare to speak better on your behalf. That makes sense. Good. All right. Cool. All right. So let's take a look at the next slide. So the next slide is we're actually getting to submitting your application. There are two basic places that you can do this. You can search for the Apply Now section in the My AmeriCorps portal under the AmeriCorps NCCC area, or you can go to americorps.gov/NCCC and look for the Apply Now button, and that will give you the current listings. So the current listings are the openings that are available for the next service term. At the end of the webinar, we're going to give you sort of a screenshot of when we start classes and when the application periods are for those classes and stuff, and just kind of give you a general idea of those things. And so it'll prepare you for what listings are currently out there and what you can expect and when. So if you want to do the summer 2020 term, we're currently accepting applications for that now. If you want to do the fall term, it'll tell you when to start looking at application, to start sending in your application. If you want to do the winter term, etc. So it'll give you an idea when to do that. Just a side note, your references do not have to be complete in order for you to apply to one of the programs. So when you go to apply now, you'll see the list of available positions. You can click on those positions and it'll give you more detailed information about what to expect, about what the compensation is, about what skill sets you need to have to do it. And then you can apply and then click on it to attach your application to that job posting. Your references have to be attached to your application. Remember, you hit the select button and then you put finish it. They have to be attached, but they don't have to be completed. So completed means that your references have responded to our email and submitted that back. So they just have to be attached. They don't have to be completed. After you apply for a position, you'll receive updates from us, and we'll keep in touch with you about information that you can expect. So make sure you're checking your email regularly so you can make sure you're responding to the next steps as quickly as possible. Also make sure your contact info is up to date, especially like if you're in college and have a temporary email address there and then you leave college. Make sure that you update where we can get a hold of you if we need to contact you. Remember, also after you send that application in, that might be an opportunity for you to go and remind your references that you've applied and just encourage them to make sure they've finished their application. All right, so that's the application process, and I'm sorry, step 4. After you've applied, we're on the eligibility status. So the eligibility part is a period where we're getting all your information and taking a look at it, and we are will inform you via email and a snail mail packet within 1 week of you submitting your application that we've received it and that we're processing it. And so there's going to be a lot of information for you. Make sure you read all that information. There will be an eligibility questionnaire that you have to complete and return via, and you can do that by telephone, you can do it by email, or you can do it regular mail. Please make sure that you pay attention to that eligibility questionnaire because that is required before moving forward with the process. Once you've completed the eligibility questionnaire, you'll need to make sure your references complete their forms before we can assess you and officially get you to the next step. But again, our team will keep you informed of where you are in the process and whether your references have completed their the information that we are not. So we'll be working with you and letting you know while we're reviewing your application. So after you've applied for a position and selected the eligibility, there's the next step, but I wanted to go back real quick. When you apply to a position, you can apply to more than one position. Sorry, I was going to say this on the last slide, but it slipped my mind. So you can apply for a team leader position and a core member position. You can apply to a core member position at a different campus or more than one campus. You can apply to as many as you want, but you only get selected for one. And so the eligibility process and the process from here on out, you've applied to a number of listings, but you'll only get accepted to one and move forward with one. Right. So then we've gone on to the eligibility. After you've completed your eligibility and the assessment is complete because your references have returned their information to us, you will receive an invitation to campus. And that is a notification that you have been invited to serve. If you are invited to serve, you will be assigned to one of our 4 regional campuses and given information about that campus. You actually have to accept your invitation in order to move forward to the next step. So again, pay attention to any email alerts or text alerts that you get from our team to make sure that you're communicating with them. The other options other than invitation are that you could be placed on a wait list or your application could be rejected. Regardless of whether you're invited, put on the wait list, or rejected, you'll be informed. So you know, if you're waitlisted, that basically means that you qualify to serve, but we have all our positions full for this service term. And so waitlisted folks tend to be placed in the next class into a position. So if you try to get into the summer 2020 term, but there are no more spaces left, you get put on a wait list. When the fall 2020 term starts, then you'll be put on, you'll be invited to serve in that term as one of the first people that we send out invitations to. So make sure you accept your invitation to serve. If you're placed on a wait list, you still have to accept the invitation, and you still have to do the clearance paperwork that it says there on the screen. Just in case, the other thing that can happen when you're on a wait list is that people that were invited drop out, and you might still get on to serve the term that you want to serve. So if you applied for summer 2020 and you got waitlisted, other people drop out, and then they might contact you to come in and serve for 2020. So you still have to do the next steps in the program, in the application process. So completing your clearance paperwork is an important step. That step number, that'll come, we'll talk about that in a second. This is information specific to the team leader application. So if you're not thinking about applying for a team leader application, we just have 2 slides of information for you to just to kind of hold tight. As you can see, we went from step 5 back to step 2. Team leaders, when you apply for a position, you have 2 additional questions that you need responses for, where you give an opportunity to describe your leadership, your supervision and teaching experiences, and explain how you want to strengthen AmeriCorps as your as a team leader. There are also 17 yes or no questions that we ask, and these are just questions for us to get information about your experience and do you meet certain requirements to be a team leader. For team leaders, also keep in mind that the way this process works, you can see that we've skipped up to step 5 now. The way this process works is once all your information and your application information has been received, each of our campuses will then take a look at your application and review it in kind of a competitive fashion, and they will reach out to you and conduct a phone interview with you and give you a verbal invitation to serve. And if you're invited to serve, then you have to let them know if you accept the invitation to be a team leader. And then once that happens, you'll be sent an invitation packet. So you'll be contacted directly by the campus that you'll be working for in that situation. Other than that, you're still going to have to do all the other steps that everyone has to do to apply. You'll still have to do your medical clearance and your legal clearance. You'll still have to do all the like your references and all those other things. But this is sort of an additional step of things that you'll have to do. So step 6 is talking about those clearance forms that we talked about that you would be sent out. So once you accept the invitation, you are sent the clearance form packets. That includes a fingerprint card. It includes a health assessment and planning form, as well as an immunization form and an online survey. You have to complete all those forms. As you can see, for individuals who are applying for AmeriCorps, there are also 3 additional forms to fill out. Again, we talked about AmeriCorps being a little bit more stringent about the legal clearances, and those 3 additional forms are related to that. So we get that, make sure that when you get those forms, you fill them out completely, make sure you sign those forms. We don't reimburse for fingerprints, but you can contact your local police department and get information on how to get that filled out. All right, so the next step is prepared for service. So once you've been cleared medically and legally, you'll get an onboarding packet that gives you information that you have to fill out on just how you're going to get to campus, different kinds of forms that we need you to fill out for insurance and things like that, just some logistical stuff. You'll also get an email with a link to an optional onboarding training. And you also given the option to connect with people, other people that have been accepted to serve via Facebook. Member support specialists will also reach out to you about how to make travel arrangements about 1 to 2 weeks before it's time for you to leave for campus. The next slide here is just a couple things to watch out for. Again, we talked a little bit about this first one in the past. I'm sorry, it's the second one. When you're filling out your profile, make sure that you use your zip code plus the 4 extra digits that you have for your locality. You can find that by following the web link from the United States Postal Service there, where it can give you that extra 4-digit code. The thing that we talked about before is the eligibility questionnaire. Most of the people that aren't accepted into the program, it's because they don't fill out the eligibility questionnaire and return that questionnaire. So make sure that once you apply for a position that you're checking your email. We also recommend that you look in your junk or your spam folder, because sometimes stuff from the government gets sent there. So our email contacts might go to your spam folder. The last thing we recommend is the medical and legal clearances processes can be confusing for some, and it can take a period of time, 4 to 6 weeks for some folks. For some folks, it's a week. So be sure to fill out those forms completely. Make sure you pay attention to your signatures. Make sure you're responding to everybody that reaches out to you from AmeriCorps in a timely fashion. All right, so this is the chart that I mentioned before. As you can see, it gives you an idea of the 3 different periods where we start service in fall and winter and summer. It gives you an idea of when Corps members are able to apply and when they would serve, and when a team leader is applying and when he or she is serving. As you can see, our summer Corps program is going on right now, and we're actually those dates, yeah, okay, December to March. So this is December of 2019 to March 31st of 2020, not 2020 to 2021. So those are the dates to be aware of for the summer term, and this is when you can expect to serve. So, all right, just some last bit of information for you. These are ways that you can contact us and stay in touch. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. We can also give you a couple more, like I said, a couple of time here to discuss some questions. So I'm going to turn this over to Jackie, and we can go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Scott. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and begin our Q&A session. We have had a lot of questions coming in from all of you on the line, so thanks so much for your participation. We're getting some really great questions. With 11 minutes left, we're going to go through as many of these as we possibly can. And as we indicated at the beginning, to go ahead and use the Q&A box to ask your questions about the content of this webinar. We're going to address those questions first, okay? So at this time, we have an anonymous attendee who asked the question about selecting a preferred region to serve in. So unfortunately, at this time, we are not able to allow folks to select their preferred region. We do invite folks based on their availability, the program. We sort of have a rotational system that we use with regard to invitations to specific regions. Regarding the ability to accommodate folks with different disorders and disabilities, we do work with folks on an individual basis on that. So we can certainly connect you with our team in the selection and placement department to make sure that you're getting the services you need and that you're set up for success there. Does anybody else have anything to add, panelists, about that question? Okay, great. So we'll move on to Jason's question there. My hope is to use service with NCCC as a catalyst or avenue to serve or work in a position with government agencies such as the National Park Service or the U.S. Forest Service. So is basically is this an effective avenue to get where you want to be? I want to take the opportunity to answer your question there, Jason. Absolutely. We have seen many folks who serve with AmeriCorps NCCC, Traditional Corps and FEMA Corps obtain great jobs in the government. I myself served in the Peace Corps. I also served a year in AmeriCorps, and I'm working for the government now. We've got several members of our team currently at AmeriCorps NCCC who have served. Specifically with FEMA Corps, you do get 1 full year now of specialized service with the government, so we're expecting to see even more conversion rates of AmeriCorps members to full-time federal employees from that as well. So I would say absolutely, this is a great springboard, great foot in the door for government service. And particularly, we do see a lot of sort of back and forth between the national service programs. So if you're interested in serving with Peace Corps, NCCC is a great way to get started with that, and vice versa. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, and we can move on here. So the next question is about the president's budget proposal affecting NCCC. So at this time, we would just recommend you to go ahead and proceed with the route that is most convenient for you. This is, I believe, the 4th straight year that the budget has proposed to eliminate national service programs. We have not been eliminated so far. That said, everything is of course dependent on funding, and this is of course always a concern for national service. However, our leadership is always working with elected officials, promoting us in the field, making sure that we get the support that we need, and we have had that bipartisan support for the last several years. So at this time, again, just go ahead and proceed with whatever year of service you have planned on, and we hope to see you there. The next question is from Kelly. If there is a chance to specify your preferred region, we did go ahead and answer that. So I'm going to go ahead and dismiss you there, Kelly. Thanks for your question. Jason's question next about time off during service during the holidays. Does anybody want to jump in and answer that one? Any of my panelists?
Yeah, I can answer it. This is Erica. So you do receive some time off. You are allowed a couple of personal days if you choose to take those. So these are times or days that you can decide that you want to go and spend it how you choose, but you are allowed 3 of those throughout your service year. There will also be a period, a week-long period, depending on what term you are serving. It's called a mid-year break. So this can sometimes fall in the summer, or other times it will fall I believe around the holidays in December sometime. So you do get a week off as well as the personal leave to use how you choose.
Thanks, Erica. And I want to add one point too, just to that. AmeriCorps NCCC will pay for your transportation to get to campus at the start of your service term, and will pay for you to get home at the end of your service term. But if you do choose to travel in the middle of your service term for whatever reason, that would be at your own cost. So that's something to be aware of. Even if you get that break, if you want to travel home, that would still be at your expense, just so you are aware.
Oh, Scott, I forgot about one other thing. Also, during that break, if you do not choose to go home, you decide to stay local wherever your campus is, the campus would be open to you during that time as well. So another thing to keep in mind.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So we're going to continue on. We're going to answer questions for maybe about 3 more minutes, and then we'll have to wrap up. The next question is from an anonymous attendee about selecting your preferences if you're applying to multiple openings. So you can certainly apply to multiple openings, different listings if you like. We recommend really kind of trying to hone in on the one that's most attractive to you. For example, if you're interested in being a team leader, go ahead and apply to that one for sure. There's not really a section in the application portal where you can select your top 3 choices or something like that. But our selection and placement team is excellent, and they work with each applicant. For example, if they want to be a team leader but they're not selected, to make sure that they're offered the opportunity to be considered for regular corps member role if that's something that they're interested in. So just know that we do kind of work with you on an individual basis. We've got a lot of applications, but we try to provide as personalized support as possible to you. Okay, moving along here, Marissa Perret. The phone interview for the team leader is only done if you are selected for that piece. So once you apply to be a team leader, you are vetted just first of all on a very basic level by our application and selection team at the headquarters level, just to make sure everything is complete. At that point, your application is sent to the regional campuses where we have staff that review your application. If they want to conduct a phone interview with you, they will reach out directly. Once the phone interview has been completed, they will either they will send you a notification about your service. So they'll either invite you directly or they'll let us know that you have not been selected at this time. So I hope that answers your question, and we will keep it moving. Okay, so for Corey Terry, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. For traditional corps, there is absolutely agricultural work. We have many different projects all around the country, and those different projects can be explored on our website, americorps.gov/NCCC as well. Agricultural work, community gardens, construction work, all of that kind of stuff is kind of assigned to teams on an as-needed basis, and we kind of select those out just based on the number of teams that we have and where the projects are located. So we can't always guarantee that you're going to work in one particular project, but your sort of willingness to experience new things and your openness to learning is going to definitely enhance your experience with us. Okay. At this time, I am going to open up to my panelists if there's any final thoughts just before we wrap up. I see that there are still plenty of questions here, but we will give you the opportunity in our follow-ups to certainly ask those. So at this time, I'll just allow my panelists to express any final thoughts, and then I'll wrap up with some additional kind of wrap up points there about how we'll follow up with you. Okay, and it looks like we're good. So we want to just thank you again for your participation. We apologize we didn't get the opportunity to answer all of your questions. We will be sending out a follow-up email with the slide deck, the recording from today's session, as well as the application guide that we gave you the link to in the chat box there. So that'll be coming to you through email, along with some other resources. There will be the opportunity to request somebody follow up with you directly if you have a specific question. So you can schedule either a phone chat or an email with any members of our team, just so that you can get all your questions answered and make sure you're good to go. So just be on the lookout for that. You can connect with us. Obviously, this is all of our information here via social media, the hotline, email, and the website. So please do connect with us, follow us, reach out to us. We want to hear from you. And our next informational webinar about the application selection process will be occurring sometime in March in preparation for those March 31st deadlines that are coming up. So thank you everybody again so much. We're very thrilled with this participation level, and we hope to hear from you again soon.